Hello, my name is Sophie Williams, and today I'm going to be talking to y'all about how texting changed the way we communicate. Before texting existed, there were still plenty of ways that communication happened that led up to the invention of texting. For instance, in the 1830s, Samuel Morse developed the telegraph, and thanks to that technology's concept of wired-based electrical systems, he laid the foundation for instant two-way communication and connection. On March 10, 1876, Alexander Graham Bell executed the first phone call. He invented the telephone based on the telegraph structural framework. In 1971, two major advances in communication happened. The first email was delivered between two computers on a closed network, and government agencies began using instant messaging as a way to chat with each other. On April 3, 1973, a researcher and executive at Motorola named Martin Cooper made the first mobile phone call. Funny enough, he called Dr. Joel Engel, an engineer at Motorola's rival company, Bell Labs. In 1983, mobile phones became available for consumer purchase in the US. Each mobile phone cost nearly $4,000. And if you look right below the title that says communication before texting, you can see a nice little GIF, however you want to call it, of the telegraph. With all the methods of communication previously happening, the invention of texting started to take place. So in 1984, a Finnish engineer named Matti Mikkonen came up with the idea of the text message while he was having a pizza at a telecommunications conference in Copenhagen. Not too much longer, a year later, in 1985, the concept of a short message service, aka known as SMS, or just now known as texting, was created by Friedhelm Hildebrand and Bernard Gilbert. On a typewriter, they experimented with the character length of a message that was long enough to communicate effectively, but also short enough to be sent over the bandwidth restrictions of the wireless networks during that time. They determined that the 160 character limit was the quote-unquote sweet spot. December 3rd, 1992, a British engineer named Neil Papworth sent the first text message reading "Merry Christmas" from a personal computer to a cell phone across town, belonging to Vodafone executive Richard Jarvis. The cell phone was an Orbital 901, and it wasn't even equipped to send a response. 1 year later, in 1993, Nokia became the first handset manufacturer to support user-to-user text messaging on their GSM, otherwise known as Global System for Mobile Communications, phone line. And if you look to the left, right next to it, you'll see a cute little GIF of Nokia. In 94, a year later, networks began offering person-to-person texting, but only between two people on the same network. And multi-tap texting, where you had to press the numbers on your keypad multiple times until you got the letter that you wanted. I'm sure most of us know the struggle. Was the only option available for texting at that time. Continuing on with the events that led up to texting, in 1995, an entrepreneur named Cliff Kushler invented T9 texting, which is text on 9 keys, predictive texting, to give our thumbs a break and make texting a whole lot easier and faster. Shortly later, in 1997, Nokia, previously mentioned, then introduced the QWERTY keyboard, which is the standard keyboard layout that we all use now. In 2002, multimedia messaging services, otherwise known as MMS, is created, which allows us to send photos and videos to each other, which is huge. I mean, I couldn't even imagine texting and not being able to send photos or pictures. In 2007, I'm sure we all remember, Apple introduced the iPhone and the popularity of texting increased dramatically. And there's a cute little GIF of somebody scrolling through an iPhone. And today, we now send up to 16 million plus texts every minute and up to 20 billion plus texts a day. and the numbers are ever increasing. Now, with texting becoming more and more popular, there are going to be pros and cons. And this may seem like a lot, but there are lots of pros to texting as well as lots of cons, but that's with anything, it seems. So, among these pros, it's high response rate, privacy, help with forgetfulness, helps with hard pill to swallow information. It's universally used. There's no rules, cost effective, and helps maintain communication. So with high response rate, texting is so easy and it's so quick and fast that when you send these messages, it's sending so fast and you're receiving these messages so fast, so you can easily stay in contact with people in an instant, in a second. And then privacy. Everyone knows when you're on a phone call and you're in public, no matter how much you whisper, there's always going to be one person that can hear your phone call. So texting offers a privacy level where you can just type what you want to type, and unless someone's staring at your screen or they're the person receiving the text message, they shouldn't see what you're talking about. Texting also helps with forgetfulness. So I know that there's plenty of times when my parents have texted me a grocery list or something, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to remember that. And then I get to the grocery and completely forget. So you pull up your little text messages and it's there. And then so it helps with that. It also helps with hard pill to swallow information. So if you have bad news or anything of that sort and you need to tell somebody, texting them is a bit more informal. So it adds a buffer aspect if you feel uncomfortable with letting people know certain information. And it shouldn't really come back on you if you're the one that's texting it. It's also universally used. So with the increase in all phones having text messaging, regardless of what phone you really have nowadays, you can easily stay in contact with anyone. So I have like cousins all around the country and family all around the country, and it's great to be able to just send them a quick text message and see how they're doing, or during this time especially just texting my friends and saying like, oh, how are y'all, like how's home life, stuff like that. Another pro is that there's no technical rules. So even though there's so many different forms of communication, like social media and things like that, if you were to go on Facebook, you wouldn't be able to say certain things. There are rules on Facebook or on social media and all of that kind of sort. Whereas when you're texting somebody, it's practically limitless. You can say whatever you want, you can talk about whatever you want, whatever topics, anything like that. And so there's no technical rules, there's no restrictions. It's cost effective. It's one of the most cheapest methods of communication, especially if you have access to the internet and don't use wireless communication. It's cheap and easy. And it also, as I stated previously in the universally used section, it helps maintain communication. So, I mean, it's great that I can just text people all the time, or just I can text on my laptop, I can text on my phone, I can text my brother who lives out of state, and during this time especially, it's very near and dear to my heart. Now, with there being plenty of pros to texting, now talking about all the pros and cons, obviously texting has changed communication drastically. So one way is just getting straight to the point of things. Texting, as I stated previously, it caused, especially when there was a time when you had to press one key multiple times to get the letter that you wanted, it kind of forced people to simplify what they were saying unless they were to see each other in person or do a phone call. So it's in the 140 in the character limit, kind of just it limited people. So we adapted and started to kind of get to the point of our text messages and of our messages, and we would use substitutes for like little letters. So like great, for example, instead of spelling it out, you would just do GR and the number 8 and stuff like that. So just condensing everything down. Face-to-face communication. Texting drastically changed face-to-face communication because nowadays I don't know enough people that will go out of the way to go visit somebody to ask them a question or ask how their day is or just check up on them. It's nowadays it's either a phone call or a text message or even a FaceTime. It would be very bizarre for people our age nowadays to just walk on over without letting you know, without texting you, and just knock on your door and say, "Hey, what's up?" But in my childhood, I mean, that's just how it was, but that was pre iPhone. Um, yeah. So face to face communication has drastically decreased due to this, but I guess some could argue that FaceTime is face to face communication. But I believe that there's nothing like the real thing, the real face to face, sitting down, breathing the same air. Also, yeah, surface level communication, same as getting to the point. As I said previously, there's a lack of tone in certain text messaging, and when you have to condense your wording so much because of having to type fast and character limits and everything like that, everything is just now read at surface level for the most part, and everything's just shorter and to the point. And if you were to send a really long message, it's very unlikely for someone to read the whole thing because a short paragraph in a Word document would look like a novel through text message. It's just how it is. And yeah, obviously it changes how we write. So I use lots and lots of pictures, lots of videos, lots of emojis, lots of shortened words, initialisms when I text and when I type to my friends. So as I said previously, when I write papers, it completely has molded the way that I speak, the way that I articulate, everything like that. And then also, one of the cons that I mentioned earlier, impatience and instant gratification. Texting is so easy, texting is so fast that it causes us to feel like we deserve instant gratification and that we need to be connected constantly. So, since it's so easy to send a quick text message and it's so easy to get a reply, we tend to get confused when somebody doesn't reply right away, or whether somebody reads our text message and doesn't respond, or reads our text message and takes too long to type. Things like that. It's instilled an impatience in a lot of people who don't. It's just an impatience and for instant gratification that was not there previously. Instant gratification of a response, instant gratification for constant connection that just wasn't there. And then with the ways that texting has influenced everybody else, it's influenced me a tad different than it probably would some of the younger generation. But I was born in 1999, and that was I grew up. I got my first phone. It was a flip phone. And then I got another phone after that, and it still wasn't an iPhone. And then my third phone was an iPhone 4. It wasn't even the newest iPhone. Yeah, the newest iPhone, because I think the first one was a 3. And so my generation is one of those generations that kind of was living in that odd gap between our parents who grew up with landlines and popularity of dial-up computers and stuff like that. So it's like I have a glimpse of, I had a landline, I had dial-up growing up, but then I also saw this strange dynamic of switch between popularity of having a flip phone to all kids now getting iPads and iPhones and everything at such a young age and being constantly stimulated and constantly connected with everybody. And it's just the concept of texting and the concept of constant connection and communication has affected my generation a lot differently than it did the previous, or this generation. So the two main ways that texting has influenced me is through ease and connection. Growing up, I have, as I mentioned previously, I have family all over the world, and I have a family member in California, and everybody usually has, sometimes I guess, everybody usually has a cousin that's somewhat their age. Well, my cousin lives in California, so as a kid, we used to be pen pals. We would literally write letters to each other and just wait and get a response, and it was pretty neat. Even though we technically had landlines, we could call each other. It was just more of a fun thing to do. Nowadays with texting, it's like almost pointless to send letters and sit there. It's not pointless, but it's kind of backtracking a bit. So with constant connection, I can call them anytime, I can text them anytime, especially during this time of quarantine and things like that, and them living in California. I can constantly stay connected with them, and make sure that they're safe, and them make sure that we're safe, and it brings a sense of calming. Yeah. And so I can also stay connected to friends in college who were forced to relocate home and things like that. It's just calming, I guess. And then ease is how easy it is. I mean, I had a flip phone, and I remember it had the thing where you had to click the number more than one time just to get one letter. And I remember first getting the phone and it being almost pointless to text people. I would just call people because it was a little flip phone and you just open it up and call somebody, and it was so much easier than taking 15 minutes to send one sentence. It was just it was crazy. And so seeing that drastic change from having the flip phone to now having like predictive text and iPhones and touchscreens, and being able to use send pictures, such clear pictures, emojis, shortcuts, GIFs, and initialisms. It's crazy, and makes life so much easier. Obviously, there is a future in texting, and it is almost impossible to sit there and try to predict it. Because at the end of the day, texting technology is never going to be done evolving. Whether texting still exists or we figure out some sort of virtual reality for texting, nobody knows, but we will always, as in human nature, we will always find ways to stay connected with each other, whether it be our downfall or not. But nobody knows what's going to come tomorrow. But I know that I added a cute little GIF in here of a little spaceman in space next to an alien, saying he's still connected, which that's just how it is. You can stay connected from anywhere, and that's just how it's going to be. I have a feeling that the need and want to be constantly connected to people is never going to change, but the way that we are connected will. And so, thank y'all so much for listening. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope this maybe put a different perspective on texting for you all. And yeah, thank you.